Welcome to Movies in the Making. In today's episode, we are going to be looking at the 2000 supernatural horror film Final Destination, originally released by New Line Cinema and directed by James Wong. Here, we will dive deep into the story of the production of this film. This is the first installment of a successful horror franchise that is super creative, so we will discuss where it all began by detailing how the first film was made. If you would like to hear about how more films were done behind the scenes, please like down below and subscribe to this channel for more videos. Now, sit back and enjoy the show. You are all in for a deathly ride. The concept for Final Destination originated from Jeffrey Reddick, who was inspired by a magazine story about a woman who had a premonition that saved her from a deadly plane crash. Intrigued by the idea of someone cheating death, Reddick wrote it as a spec script for the Fox TV show The X-Files in hopes of landing an agent. Encouraged by a producer to turn it into a feature film, the story caught the attention of X-Files executive producers James Wong and Glenn Morgan. They loved the idea and, drawing on their own experience in television, collaborated with Reddick to develop it into a full-length film. Their version, granted in the concept of an unseen force of death using everyday objects in elaborate Rube Goldberg-style accidents, became the foundation for what would turn into a hugely successful horror franchise. James Wong became the director of Final Destination after co-writing a new version of Jeffrey Reddick's original X-Files spec script with his writing partner Glenn Morgan, transforming the concept by removing the physical personification of death and instead portraying it as an invincible, omnipresent force using everyday objects and elaborate, fatal chain reactions. Wong had earned an Emmy nomination for directing the X-Files Season 4, Episode 7, Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man, which premiered on the 17th of November 1996. Which helped convince New Line Cinema to let him helm the project as his feature directorial debut. Though initially nervous, Wong leaned on his collaborators and focused on creating suspenseful, rhythmically varied death sequences that subverted audience expectations. His vision and insistence on keeping death unseen helped shape the franchise's identity and contributed to its lasting success, with the visceral audience reaction and global resonance proving the impact of his creative choices. Initially, Reddick imagined a darker, more supernatural story where survivors were tormented by guilt. But Wong and Morgan revoked the treatment, stripping away any literal depiction of death by focusing on an invisible, inevitable force. Inspired by classic horror and monster films, they rewrote the characters as teenagers, chasing the success of Scream, Dimension Films 1996, and built in eerie, atmospheric details to establish a growing sense of dread. They also introduced key elements like the philosophical mortician character played by Tony Todd and refined the deaths to be sudden, shocking, and memorable. Although the original ending was softer and more reflective, test audiences demanded something more visceral, leading to now iconic twists that reinforce the film's central theme: no one truly escapes death. Inspired by the real-life story he read while flying home to Kentucky, as a longtime fan of horror, especially A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984, Reddick eventually landed a job at New Line Cinema, the studio behind that film, after persistently contacting founder Bob Shaye as a teen. He worked there for 11 years, during which he developed Final Destination. The process took years of rewriting, and he credits both his determination and faith for the project's success. He also emphasizes the importance of protections from organizations like the Writers Guild of America, WGA, which ensured he was compensated for his work. Known as the franchise's Godfather, he continues to support independent filmmakers and pursue projects driven by passion and creativity. The film was originally titled Flight 180, which explains why the number 180 appears both subtly and overtly throughout the film. However, New Line Cinema changed the title to Final Destination to avoid comparisons with other airplane thrillers like Con Air, Touchstone Pictures, 1997, and Air Force One, Columbia Pictures, also 1997, despite those films being released 3 years earlier. Interestingly, the new title also appears on Alex's luggage tag in an early scene, and the intricate shot of his alarm clock flipping from 1 a.m. to 180 took about 4 days to complete. Reddick originally envisioned Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst as the leads for the film, but the studio had other ideas, ultimately casting rising stars like Devon Sawa, Ali Larter, Kerr Smith, and Sean William Scott. The latter brought in on a strong recommendation of producer Craig Perry. Despite the strong lineup, Reddick expressed disappointment over the lack of diversity in the cast, especially since the story was set in New York City, one of the most diverse places in the world. However, he was thrilled when New Line's Shay secured horror legend Tony Todd for a pivotal cameo. Co-writer and director Wong aimed to create a plane crash sequence as memorable and terrifying as Jaws, Universal Pictures' 1975, was for swimming. Though the film later faced criticism for closely resembling the real-life TWA Flight 800 tragedy in 1996, even using actual crash footage, something Reddick admitted made him uneasy. Casting director John Papsidera reflected on the film's early days and how one actor, Adrien Grenier, ruined his audition by openly criticizing the script during the process. Papsidera recalled how tough it was to finalize the cast, with Sawa ultimately landing lead after some difficulty and Ali Ladder edging out Jessica Biel for the role of Claire due to her relatable charm and alignment with the character's real-life inspiration. Kristen Cloak was cast as the teacher, a role that came with behind-the-scenes politics due to her marriage to screenwriter Glenn Morgan, while Tony Todd had to be convinced to join the haunting mortician, eventually leaving a lasting impression. Papsidera also noted how the film's enduring fear factor stems from its use of real-world scenarios, making its horror feel plausible and long-lasting, an effect that continues even decades later. Several original death scenes were ultimately replaced in the film by what became the franchise's signature approach: elaborate, Rube Goldberg-style chain reactions that turned ordinary, everyday items into instruments of death, an idea credited to James Wong and Glenn Morgan. Jeffrey Reddick praised this concept for making death feel omnipresent and relatable, heightening suspense as viewers anticipated the slow-building sequences. A major challenge, however, was convincing the studio to physically depict death. Reddick strongly believed that keeping death unseen allowed audiences of any belief system to interpret it as their own way, a stance Wong and Morgan supported. This creative decision, Reddick believes, helped the film transcend horror fandom and achieve international success. Although Final Destination is primarily set in the fictional Mount Abraham, New York City, it was largely filmed in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Several key locations from the film, such as the Vancouver International Airport, were used for the exterior shots of the JFK Airport and a few terminal scenes. Alex's home, where he witnesses a lightning strike, is located at 46AA Connaught Drive in Vancouver, an area well known for its use in other films like The Stepfather, New Century Vista Film Company, 1987, and Happy Gilmore, Universal Pictures, 1996. The memorial scene for the students was shot at the back of Carousel Elementary School, located at 5555 Carnarvon Street, which was also later used in Freddy vs. Jason, New Line Cinema, 2003. Other locations include the house on 3707 Hudson Street and Todd's house at 1312 Balfour Avenue. Throughout the film, several memorable death scenes were filmed in distinct locations around the Vancouver area. For instance, Terry's fatal encounter with a bus takes place at a coffee shop at 4840 Delta Street in Delta, British Columbia. The survivors' drive through the streets was shot on Pemberton Avenue in North Vancouver, and the cabin Alex uses to isolate himself was repurposed from Betty White's house in Lake Placid, 20th Century Studios, 1999. The film's finale was reshot in Victoria, British Columbia once again, at Le Café Miro 81, located at 50 Bastion Square, which served as the Paris setting for the surviving characters' celebration. One of the most memorable moments in the film takes place when Claire visits Alex on the beach at night. This scene was filmed at a real beach, but the fake trees were added along the entrance to create the illusion of a maze that Claire navigates. Originally, the scene was intended to show Alex and Claire consummating their romance, but this was ultimately removed from the final cut. Another subplot revealing that Claire became pregnant after having sex with Alex on the beach was also discarded. To create the intense turbulence of the doomed plane scene, the filmmakers built the airplane set on a gimbal, a rotating support that mimicked the motion of a crashing aircraft. This took about 2 months to build. After filming, the same set was repurposed and redressed to serve as Claire's attic during the stormy climax, while her cabin was actually the same one used in Lake Placid. The plane crash scene in the film was also heavily inspired by the real-life tragedy of the TWA Flight 800, which exploded off the coast of Long Island on the 17th of July 1996. The filmmakers incorporated actual footage from the wreckage and aftermath into the film, lending it an additionally disturbed realism. Additionally, the film mirrored specific details from the incident, such as a group of high school students traveling to Paris with their teacher, just like the French club aboard the real flight. Val's dramatic death was cleverly foreshadowed by a wall-mounted dagger and the fiery tones of her front door, while the execution of the scene involved practical effects and camera tricks. For the impalement, actress Cloak was positioned beneath a fake wooden floor with a silicone double above her. And for the shard of glass from the exploding computer, a prosthetic neck with inserted glass was filmed in reverse as the piece was pulled out by a wire later removed digitally, making it appear as if the glass flies into her throat when played forward. The bus scene, in which Terry Chaney is killed, stands out as some of the most shocking and memorable moments. Terry steps into the heat, only to be instantly struck by a city bus, killing her in a sudden and startling manner. This death, while not gory, is one of the film's most effective jump scares, as it occurs without warning, unlike the slow building suspense in Todd's death. Wong revealed that no visual effects were used in the scene. They simply used a dummy filled with fake blood and ran a bus through it. The impact of his death was so strong that Wong and his team went to theaters to observe audience reactions, noting how ushers would anticipate in the scene's shock value. The bus death's surprise and visceral nature became a standout moment in the whole franchise and has been imitated in countless films since. The train scene was one of the most difficult to film, as it involved a dangerous stunt where Carter, a jock who would become Alex's enemy, while Alex, Clear, and Billy managed to convince Carter to keep fighting for his life, he becomes trapped in the car. Although Alex successfully rescues him before the train strikes, the scene required meticulous preparation to ensure the safety of everyone involved. Special effects supervisor Terry Sonderhoff and his team carefully cut the car in half before filming and made sure no sheet metal was left in the vehicle to avoid injury during the crash. Ironically, it is Billy in the film who tragically meets his end moments later when the train hits the car. One scene involving Carter elbowing Billy in the face was rewritten to include Billy's bloodied lip, which was a result of actor Scott arriving on set with a sore lip. The makeup team applied fake blood to the injury, and the scene was adjusted to hide it. Additionally, both Smith and Scott took Dramamine before each take of the plane crash sequence because they were so exhausted, which led the filmmakers to avoid close-ups of the actors during that scene. Shirley Walker was chosen to score the film due to her successful past collaborations with filmmakers James Wong and Glenn Morgan, particularly on another Fox TV show Space, Above and Beyond. Having already established a strong working relationship, her understanding of their style made it easier to approach scoring their feature film. She appreciated their shared admiration for each other's work, which helped create a familiar and effective language for the score. Wong's vision for the film, including the use of a traditional main title sequence, aligned perfectly with Walker's approach, allowing her to craft a dark and suspenseful theme. Known for her preference for subtle, low-key background music, Walker's score for Final Destination emphasized mood and atmosphere while maintaining melodic elements that supported the film's tense moments and character-driven situations. The soundtrack also prominently features songs by the legendary musician John Denver, adding an eerie, subliminal tone to the film. This choice is particularly poignant considering Denver's tragic death in a plane crash on the 12th of October 1987. The inclusion of his music amplifies the film's central theme of inevitable death and underscores how a plane crash serves as a catalyst for a chain of events in his story. As of the 29th of April 2025, Final Destination has a 40% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a 39 out of 100 critic score on Metacritic, a 6.7 rating on IMDb, and a 3.2 rating on Letterboxd. The film's budget was $23 million, and it grossed a total of almost $113 million following its initial release date of the 17th of March 2000. And that wraps up our deep dive into the making of Final Destination. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to stay updated on all things movies in the making. Let us know in the comments what you think of Final Destination, or if you have any favorite ones for that film we did not touch upon, or films you would like to hear covered by this channel. Also be sure to check out our community page, where we announce what films we've talked about by this channel each week. New posts arrive every Friday, or Saturday if we forget to post on Friday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time on Movies in the Making, where we'll be talking about Galaxy Quest, DreamWorks Pictures 1999. Shout out to user Tune to help of 5433 for bringing it up. We will also have more films to follow along the way. Tune in for more Movies in the Making as we uncover stories behind cinema's most unforgettable films. This has been Jason Scotchmer. film enthusiast, and passionate about the arts.